You're listening to the Pens Nation radio show on thepensnation.com. Follow us on Twitter at thepensnation.
It's the Pens Nation radio show. Right? I think that's what it is, right? Anyways,
that's what it's called.
Yeah. It's Monday night. It's the Pens Nation radio show, and you are tuned in at thepensnation.com. Follow us on Twitter at thepensnation. You can follow Andy, who's on tonight, PensNation_Andy, Hockey Mish at Hockey Mish, and you can follow me at PensNation_Nick. That was pretty much a lame intro tonight, but you know what? It couldn't be any worse than the criticism James Neal is getting tonight. Actually, all day today, and much of it's pretty deserved, much like our intro deserves as much criticism as any other intro we've ever had. So, thanks for tuning in. We got a lot on the show tonight. We're going to be talking about James Neal and if he is the new Matt Cooke, if he should basically just change his number or whatever. We're going to be talking about the Pens weekend and how that all panned out, and if they gave us enough kind of a glimmer of hope for the playoffs. And we're also going to be doing playoff matchup Mondays. Guys, how's everything going? Mish, everything good?
Well, Simone Dupre just asked James Neal if he's shy in the showers. Hashtag Ask Neal. So I'm kind of curious as to where that one's going.
Yeah, that's definitely something everyone is going to be curious about.
Oh boy. as if things are going to get worse for Neal right now.
Bo Bennett will be the next one to tune in.
Yeah, or Simone Dupre. I mean,
somebody will tweet something.
Oh, I'm sure Jim Polano is going to love that. So that's going to be great. Actually, did you notice the Pens Twitter account had a little more gusto today to it? Seems to be a little bit snarkier. Kind of calling out a few other bloggers and stuff like that. That was kind of interesting.
Then we saw the LA Kings and the Flyers going at it. It was a big day for Twitter.
Got slammed by the Kings. That was a series of great tweets. Mish, did you see those?
I did. Although no one gave credit to the Flyers for their tweet at the end of the argument. At least I didn't see the Kings reply to it at the end. But I think the Flyers replied that they're like 5-1-2, I guess, in the Twitter era. And they got to give the Flyers credit because they actually came up with a response, which I don't know if many other teams or people on Twitter would have come up with a response.
True.
Yeah, I checked out after the big mic drop of nobody cares about the 70s.
Yeah.
Holy crap. I love it. I love the snarky Twitter feeds, and it's kind of nice in some ways to see the Penguins feed become a little bit more snarkier and kind of have a little bit more of an edge because they've been the clean-cut kind of example, kind of very bland, just a really boring feed, and lately it just seems to be, it seems to be shifting just a little bit more, and today kind of put a little bit of an exclamation point on that, and I was like, whoa. Had to kind of refresh my feed to make sure that was actually the Penguins, and it wasn't like TSN Bub McKenzie or something tweeting as a Penguins account, so.
Yeah, I'm still not impressed.
Yeah, I mean, it's baby steps. You're not going to just do that.
That was a fancy stats response. That's all that was.
It was a fancy stats response. All right, let me fix the microphone stand here. We're losing my mic. All right, guys. A lot over this weekend kind of happened. Actually, throughout this week with James Neal. Kind of got away a little bit against the Red Wings with that cross-check to the face. Got a $5,000 slap on the wrist. Guy's been suspended, 3 times now? The last one, 5 games. And he's kind of been in that kind of discussion of being a dirty player, which, he's earned. And I don't think any of us will debate that. But today, an ex-referee, was it Patrick Stewart? Am I getting the name right?
Paul Stewart, isn't it?
Paul Stewart, that's right. Paul Stewart, ex-referee for the NHL, came out and basically said James Neal is absolutely everything that is wrong with the NHL right now. And in many ways, he's right. And it kind of opens up the discussion of, if there's still like a good old boys network in the NHL, and where certain guys get away with certain things because, of who they are. Certainly, the comparison has been drawn more to, is James Neal the new Matt Cooke for the Penguins? And there's a lot kind of that you could kind of put together there, isn't there, Mish?
I mean, we were texting about this a little bit earlier. I don't want to call him the new Matt Cooke because it's a different story. I mean, there are so many ways to look at it at this point.
But there are
he's
so
a
many
goal
similarities.
Scorer. He's a very talented player, but stupid penalties, unnecessary penalties, crosses the line. What you do with it?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. That in some regards, is the exact same thing as a Matt Cooke, stupid penalties that cross the line. But, I mean, obviously, you're kind of talking apples and oranges here at the same time, where James Neal is a top 6 guy, great goal-scoring pedigree, and Matt Cooke was that typical third-line guy that, that you kind of expected that stuff out of, isn't it, Andy?
Yeah. I mean, obviously different roles with James Neal and Matt Cooke, and James Neal is a pure goal scorer, and Matt Cooke chipped in that way too. But we haven't really seen James Neal hurt many guys very seriously, but he's definitely had some instances where he's been very dirty, and he's certainly earned the reputation that he's getting right now. And something we saw a lot with Matt Cooke was he would sometimes get called for things that may not have gotten called, for other players, and we've been starting to see that a little bit with Neal. So it's clear that some of the refs are, not a huge fan, I guess, of Neal. And as you said with Stewart, that ref that made the comments, he seemed to be in agreement with that too. So there's definitely some similarities between Neal and Cooke in that regard.
Yeah, there are. And here's kind of what really bugs me about it is you've got a guy that is absolutely lethal, and then he takes these stupid penalties that kind of gets the entire team in trouble, that they have to bail his idiocracy out time and time again. Mish, this is a guy that you definitely want on the ice more, but if you compare the two players, I mean, as good as Matt Cooke was on the PK, I mean, you didn't really want to take him off the ice if he took a stupid penalty, and at the same time, you don't want to take James Neal off the ice if he takes a stupid penalty. Which one, I guess, has more of a better role with them being on the ice? Does that make sense? Like, who would you rather keep on the ice?
More value.
Who's more important? Is that what you're trying to ask me?
Yeah.
I mean, there's no question it's Neal, a guy who can score 40 goals in a season. I mean, it's a limit. There is a very, very limited quantity of those types of players in the world. I mean, Matt Cooke played the role of pest great, and yeah, he could play PK, he could figure in on a goal every so often and everything. But there are a lot of guys who are talented and come into the NHL, but they aren't talented enough, so they kind of turn to that role of pest because that's what they have to do to be in the NHL. James Neal doesn't need to be a pest. Pest does not fit into his job description. His job description is simply put the puck in the net. When he's doing that, it's great. When he decides to throw a temper tantrum and throw cross-checks at people's head, not exactly what you're expecting out of him.
No, it's certainly not, and it's one of those things that is kind of a head-scratcher, and it makes you wonder if this guy needs to change his game or what he needs to do. What do you think he needs to do here, Andy? I mean, we've seen with Matt Cooke, he absolutely shifted his game and changed his game after a lengthy suspension, after sitting down with the Penguins brass and them basically telling him, you better shape up or you're gone. Does James Neal need to make any big alterations to his game to kind of avoid this?
I mean, I don't know if the Penguins have met with him before. I remember watching, I think it was in the room, Dan Bilesma joked around saying, Neal, you need to settle down a little bit or something. So I don't know if they've actually had a meeting, but I mean, it's a little different with James Neal. I feel I don't know if Neal would be willing to change his game. I mean, he's having such the past few seasons he's had such a great time here in Pittsburgh, and he's obviously produced and has done his job. And as Mish said, being a pest and all that stuff, that's not in his job description. He's a second line winger with Evgeny Malkin, and his job is to produce, put pucks in the net, get points, whatever he needs to do to help the team win, and taking stupid penalties and things like that. That's certainly something that he needs to work on. And try to take out of his game. Now, Neal, when he's forechecking or whatever it may be, battling for the puck in the corners, things like that. Obviously, you want him to play hard, but you obviously don't want him to, cross-check someone in the head or deliver some kind of illegal hit. So if there's some way that he can continue to play hard but not do the stupid stuff, I mean, yeah, absolutely, you got to try to do that. But maybe he just needs a meeting or something like that to get his head straight, because, I mean, you just can't afford to do stuff like that, especially when we get into the playoffs. I mean, hits like that can cost you a series if it, costs your team a power play and, or even a 5-on-3 or something like that. I mean, that can cost you a playoff game, and if you do it multiple times, it could cost you a series.
Yeah, and in some ways, too, I think he's really kind of damning himself, even if he doesn't do anything in the playoffs, because right now, I mean, he's certainly building a reputation as a guy that's going to, take a super penalty. And if he's anywhere near someone that falls down, say they go up against the Bruins and Brad Marchand just decides to just take a dive, all of a sudden, ref's going to look right at number 18 there and be like, "You're out. You're 2 minutes. Tripping." Yep. And I mean, he's kind of screwing himself over. Mish, I'm going to ask you that same question here that I asked Andy. Is there anything that James Neal needs to kind of work on in his game? Does he need to change it up at all?
In his game, no, and that's the weird part. This actually has nothing to do with his game, because this isn't a part of his game. It's a part of the fact that he's kind of a child and has a temper and decides to throw a temper tantrum every so often. And he needs anger management probably more than anything. He's very, very lucky, though, so far, because if you look at some of those dirty hits he's thrown, no one has gone out for like a month with a concussion or anything like that. He's been very lucky with how the NHL does discipline, that there haven't been huge injuries to factor into his punishments or what everyone's looking at. So, I mean, all it takes is one wrong hit on one guy at the wrong angle to change a whole career and possibly get Neal like a 15-game suspension at this rate. So he just has to get rid of the temper. That's all it is. And with the refs looking for him, I mean, you guys know I keep track of how the penalties have come through so far this season. I have Neal marked down for 6 bad calls against so far. The next highest guy is Malkin with 2. That's an absurdly drastic difference this far in the season, and clearly refs just do not favor Neal, and they're looking for things to call him on. It's not going to get better.
Yeah, and in that game against Tampa the other day, it was interesting that I think it was Sammy Salo and James Neal, and they both got called for tripping, and I remember Phil Bork was a little puzzled by that, because I think Neal was the guy that went down, if I'm not mistaken. So it was just weird that both guys got called for tripping at the same time.
Yeah, Salo tripped Neal, like stick in the legs tripped him. Neal was on the ground, and I watched this in slow motion because I was trying to figure out what the refs saw. If Neal kept his skate up or anything to actually try and trip Salo as Salo was skating by. Nope, Neal's legs came down like normal. Everything was natural. Salo pretty much skated over him and fell, and Neal got a tripping penalty for it. And that's clearly just a bias against Neal at that point.
Yep.
Absolutely. I think the one thing you can kind of look at both of the games of these two players, with Matt Cooke and with James Neal, if you tie it all together, I mean, is that they basically seem to do this stuff on purpose. And I think James Neal more so, because he goes out of his way to do it when it's not in his job description. Matt Cooke was a guy that was supposed to play on the edge, and sometimes that kind of happens, but sometimes it's also on purpose too. So with Matt Cooke, you can kind of chalk it up to, okay, well, sometimes it's just because you play with that hard edge. That's kind of expected every once in a while. But I think both of them have done things on purpose, haven't they?
My only argument there is I feel even when Cooke went over the edge, he did it in an effort to get under the other team's skin or to piss the other team off. It was never for his own selfish purpose. For Neal, I feel like every single one of them is his own selfish purpose of him just thinking, I want to hit this guy in a bad way.
Well, yeah, I agree. But at the same time, I don't think he's the only player on this team that does that kind of thing. I think if you look at Evgeny Malkin right now, too, he seems to do a lot of that, too, but he doesn't do it maliciously, does he?
No, he'll hit guys, but it's not usually dirty hits like we see with Neal.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what Andy said. It's not, at least it's not intentionally dirty. Malkin, I mean, he overreacts at times to people, and there's definitely some... I mean, he has a stupid penalties just like everyone else, and probably more so than actually most. But I don't think he's intentionally looking to do anything dirty. The one thing with Neal and Glendening that annoyed me is, more than even the cross-check to the face, Neal and Glendening run into each other. Right after that, Neal slashes Glendening in the arm, and then after that, Glendening starts going for the puck, and then Neal cross-checks him in the face. Like, there's plenty of time that you know there's a thought process where he's thinking about doing it. With Malkin, it's usually just frustration, and he just attacks without having any time to process it.
Yeah, James Neal, very sneaky about the way that he goes about it, too. I mean, even if you look at the Marchand knee to the head, you know, like, I'm not going to look at him, but he's right there, and I'm going to stick my knee out. I'm going to get him. Like, he knows what he's doing. He's very cerebral about it, but he's also very sneaky, and he tries to get away with it. Now we see this with Neal, we see this with Malkin. Sometimes Crosby lets the temper get the best of him. We haven't seen it much this year, though. But does any of this kind of fall at the foot of Dan Bylsma and Ray Shero, Mish?
Probably.
Is there much they can do?
I wouldn't throw it on them. I wouldn't put really any onus on them for this, aside from the fact that maybe it's time to just sit him aside and be like, you need to control your temper before we get to the playoffs, because if we lose you in the playoffs, we really just can't afford that at all. So, aside from that, though, I mean, what can they do?
Yeah. Andy, you want to follow up with that?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, there's really not much they can do other than, you know, just tell them, hey, you need to settle down. It worked with Matt Cooke, but, you know, I mean, again, I don't know if they've said anything to James Neal, but but that's really all Ray Shero and Dan Bylsma can do. The rest, it's up to the player. I mean, he's got to execute. He's got to be the one that makes the change, and you know, it's pretty much their responsibility at that point. Because if you're not listening to your management team, then, you know, that's certainly not going to be good for you in the future. So it's the player's responsibility at all times, pretty much.
James Neal is now becoming less and less known as a pure goal scorer and kind of more and more known as a very dirty player. And I think that reputation not only is going to catch up with him with referees, but it's also going to catch up with him in his reputation around the league with other players. And someone's going to take a run at him. If he doesn't stop being a moron in that regard, like he's a phenomenal player, but if he doesn't stop doing the stupid stuff, the stupid selfish stuff that's getting him in trouble, someone's going to take a run at him, much like Michael Del Zotto did with the Rangers last year, like where he kind of stops short and throws that elbow. You know what you're doing. He kind of brings this on himself, though, doesn't he, Mish?
He does, and it's kind of how everyone old school in the NHL says the game will kind of enforce itself, and refs kind of, to a degree, let everything kind of figure itself out. I mean, you're going to take that same route at this rate. And Neal already has a history of concussions. He probably doesn't want to piss off too many people, because it's not going to take much for him to get hurt either.
No, it's not. All right, well, moving on from the James Neal discussion, the Pens did have a couple games this weekend where I thought they played pretty well. You can go check out Mish's thoughts at thepensnation.com on both of those games, the St. Louis game on Sunday as well as the Tampa Bay game on Saturday. Pens beat Tampa Bay in overtime on a James Neal goal, of all things. Hey, doing your job and doing it well. Keep doing that, all right? But you know, like, they played a pretty good game against Tampa Bay. I thought they also played a pretty good game against the St. Louis Blues, but was it enough, really, to kind of change your mind and give you any glimmer of hope for the Penguins' chances going into the playoffs? I mean, they still have a few holes-ish kind of on their team. They still have a few things that need to work through, like James Neal's anger management and Evgeny Malkin's sometimes anger management. But did that weekend really give you any kind of hope, especially that St. Louis game? And you could tweet us at the Pens Nation. Let us know what you think about that. Like if you saw anything that gave you kind of a glimmer of hope there, and we'll share that on the air. But I'm going to pose that question to you first, Mish, and then Andy, you can piggyback off of that. Do you think that series, that game against the Blues, did anything to kind of give you any hope?
I mean, in general, I was happy with it. It's as happy as I'm going to be with a 1-0 loss, put it that way. Because the defense played pretty well. I mean, probably better and more consistent than we've seen in quite a while. Even Olimata had a rough start to the game, but he steadied out as the game went on. And running 7D, I wasn't so sure about that, but everyone kind of held their ground as they figured it all out. Fleury played well. He couldn't do anything about the goal against him. I mean, Backus was in front. The Pens still only had 4 guys because it was at the end of a penalty, and the puck went off of his knee and past Fleury. He wasn't going to do anything about that. In general, I mean, a game like that tells me that when Paul Martin and or Chris Letang returns, that the Penguins might get enough firepower right there and enough of a transition game that they can score a goal or 2 on St. Louis and make it a series if they happen to run into each other in the Cup final, which is seemingly what Steigerwald and Erie wanted to push all game. But, I mean, I feel like they can match up with St. Louis at least when they're completely healthy. Maybe not yet, though.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Obviously, not scoring goals and, not being able to cash in on the 5-on-3, those are some things that, are a little concerning. But again, you're facing a St. Louis Blues team who's just unreal defensively. And Brian Elliott had a pretty good game, 33 saves in it. So, I mean, as Mish said, I thought the defense played really well. I thought Brooks Orpik was pretty good. I mean, I know he's taken some criticism here and then the past few weeks, but I thought he played pretty well, and defensively they looked pretty solid. And as Mish said, if they can get Paul Martin and Chris Letang back, they're certainly missing those guys. They could use some of those puck movers back into the lineup. But I think, the one question I have, I don't know if you guys feel this way, but do you think that the Penguins are kind of, I don't want to say, they're trying to live and die by their special teams play, I guess? I mean, I do think that the Penguins did a pretty good job penalty kill, but again, you weren't able to cash in on the 5-on-3. We saw Tampa Bay. They had against Tampa Bay. Three of those goals were on the power play. So obviously, when that power play is clicking, it seems to be when the power play is clicking. The Penguins obviously have a much better chance of winning because of that lethal power play that they have. But it seems like sometimes when they don't cash in, seems like they're losing a lot of those games, and that makes sense given the fact that all the talent is out there, and a lot of people were questioning Dan Bilesma about putting 5 forwards out there for that 5-on-3, and that's certainly a legitimate question, knowing that you had Matt Niskanen or Lee Stempniak right-handed shots out there, and you had 5 lefties instead. So there was some questions about that yesterday, but for the most part, I thought the Penguins did a pretty good job defending the Blues, and they threw everything they had at the table. But again, the Blues are just too talented defensively. It almost felt like there were 6 or 7 forwards out there for the Blues, or defensemen rather, just blocking shots and blocking passes. Just Ken Hitchcock has done a great job with that team, and I think the Penguins have a really bad record against Ken Hitchcock, if I'm not mistaken. I think I heard that yesterday, but for a 1-0 loss, I will definitely take it. For a team that didn't have Paul Martin and didn't have Chris Letang, I thought it was good. You never want to lose, but against a team like that, I thought that was a pretty good showing by them.
Yeah, and I thought Marc-Andre Fleury played a pretty good game too, and you can't really fault him on that goal because it was kind of a weird deflection kind of thing. He probably deserved a much better outcome, but Mish, this game probably gave him a bit more confidence going into the playoffs, and it was a big game situation against the number 1 team in the league, and he kept him in that game, didn't he?
I mean, I hope it gives him confidence, but at the same time, if you're Fleury the way the past month has gone, you kind of have to think, what do I have to do to get this team to function exactly in sync with me? Because, I mean, that's what the issue right now is. Fleury and the team just don't seem to be in sync regardless of what's happening. And even yesterday, Fleury only allowed 1 goal, obviously not his fault, but he bailed the team out a couple of times in the third period. I don't remember who had the chance, but he had to make that diving across the crease save, I guess, with 5 minutes or so left in the third period. Things like that, I mean, he's faced way too many of his chances recently, and that's just got to wear on him.
You mentioned Olimata kind of had a rough start to that game, and absolutely right. He's had a rough past few games, actually, and Rich Miller over at the Pens blog posted earlier this week, maybe the Pens should look at giving Olimata a rest. Do you think that, Mish, do you think that should happen, or do you think they should keep rolling 7D right now?
I don't like the idea of 7D at all. I think it serves no purpose because taking 2 or 3 minutes off of a guy's time really isn't going to have that big of an impact over the course of weeks and weeks. Honestly, I would be trying to rest everyone. I would rotate these guys out of the lineup. Orpik, Scuderi, Mata, everyone basically. Like, even Niskanen. Niskanen's played a full season basically, and at minutes he's not used to. You might as well, with this lead in the division, take some time to rest everyone.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think, Dan Bylsma was asked about this. Somebody asked why, he had Mata and Niskanen for the majority of the year. Then, they broke them up, and now they're back to Mata and Niskanen again. And, Bylsma said that, that's a pairing that we want in the playoffs and we want to prepare. But, what if one of those guys gets hurt? And, both of them are tired, I'm sure. So I wouldn't mind at all. Resting one of those guys. I know you want to prepare for the playoffs, but 1 or 2 games rest. I mean, that's not going to hurt you. You still have some time to get that, and they've been playing, together almost the whole season. So I really don't think that would be an issue if they were to rest. So I'm all for that. Oli's had a tremendous season, but you certainly don't want to have him go into the playoffs tired, and the adrenaline's going to be going. But at the same time, you don't want to tire him out. And Matt Niskanen, I mean, he's played more minutes this season than he probably ever has. So I wouldn't mind either of those guys resting. Probably both of them. Just give them 1 or 2 games, and I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you guys there, too. I mean, you want to be fresh going into the playoffs, especially because hopefully you'll be going deep into those playoffs, and it's a very grueling, as we've seen, kind of 2 months, and you're going to need to be as fresh as you can, and every little bit's going to kind of help out right now. So you're already going to have a guy like Paul Martin kind of feeling a little bit fresh, and hopefully he gets a few games before those playoffs start to kind of get his feet under him and kind of get comfortable going in. But yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with resting a guy every other night or whatever going into the playoffs, because I think you're only going to better kind of set yourself up to kind of, be fresh. So, I mean, you're not going to get rusty within a game, as many games as they've been playing here lately, too. Tomorrow night, they got or depending on when you listen to this, might be tonight, really. So, they've got the Phoenix Coyotes Tuesday night, and Phoenix might be a little bit easier tomorrow night now with Mike Smith looking like he got hurt tonight in New York. So, might not be seeing Mike Smith tomorrow night, might be seeing whoever is their backup. Who is their backup right now?
Thomas Greiss, former Sharks backup, which probably still doesn't help everyone.
No, not much.
No.
So, no, I remember the name, but yeah. Should be an easier task, although Phoenix is a pretty decent team.
They're a tough matchup for the Pens, usually.
Yeah,
I'm looking at Phoenix's road record. On the road, Phoenix is 13, 14, and 9.
Very human on the road, yes, for sure. That's more than half of their losses have come on the road. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and they won the first meeting 3-1. That was in the first of February, obviously in Phoenix.
Didn't McCulloch score in that game?
Probably. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he did, though.
Yeah. The Pens, that seems to be the trend, though. They seem to have difficulty against the teams that are very defensive-minded. Kind of have trouble scoring against those teams, and if you can shut down those top 2 lines, it makes it very difficult for a team like the Pens to kind of win those games against those teams. So we'll see kind of what pans out there. Getting ready to close off the show, though. We've got playoff matchup Monday here. We did this last week, and I messed it up, so I'm refreshing the playoff board this week. So we have the current series as they are, and we'll go through these and kind of give our input on what we think that series will end up looking like if that's the series that kind of happens. So right now out west, we've got Phoenix against the St. Louis Blues. St. Louis owns a 2-1 season series there. Mish, who do you see coming out on top in that?
I'm going to go say, if Mike Smith is injured for any actual length of time, I would go St. Louis in 4. Let's say Mike Smith is healthy, still probably going St. Louis in 5 or 6. St. Louis is just so deep and so good.
Yep. Andy?
Yeah, I love St. Louis, and I would definitely take the Blues in 5, and I probably would go with the sweep as well if Mike Smith is injured. There's I just don't see Phoenix getting by St. Louis. I think St. Louis is definitely. I think they'll definitely at least make the conference final.
Real intriguing matchup. We've got Colorado and Chicago as the next matchup. Colorado with a 4-1 season series lead. Mish, who you got?
Last week it was still the same thing, and I picked Chicago, and I'm going to stick with Chicago. I think, honestly, Chicago putting Kane on the long-term injured reserve, going into the playoffs, that could be a big pickup for him to be just completely fresh and healthy.
Oh, yeah.
I think that might be a huge boost for them going to the playoffs. So I'm going to go with Chicago, and I'll say 6.
All right, Andy.
I'll go with Chicago as well. Colorado's had a pretty solid year. I know they were one of the big stories in the beginning of the season, but I don't think they can match up against Chicago. And I do think that the Kane, I agree with that. He's going to be fresh coming out, so that's going to be a really dangerous team once again, as they always are at that time of the year. So I'll go Chicago in 5.
Yeah, I kind of lean towards Chicago here too, and St. Louis also probably in 4 in that prior matchup. But it's such a weird thing to see such a lopsided season series go one way, and then it just seems. I mean, it happened last year with Pittsburgh and Boston. They won all the games, and then they lose all the games. So, stranger things have happened. So I do see Chicago coming out on top of there, and probably 5 or 6. I'll say 6 because I think Colorado might kind of just match up okay against them right now. Their youth kind of helps them out there a lot. So there'll be their speed can kind of give them problems in Chicago a little bit. So we'll see. Minnesota and Minnesota and San Jose. Mish, it's a season series of 2-1 for San Jose.
It still surprises me that Minnesota is doing as well as they are. I don't know. For some reason, I don't even think about them. I completely forget they exist half the time. People were talking about Marian Gaborik today, and I forgot he was a Wild until I heard it today. So, based on the fact that I continually forget Minnesota exists, I'm going to end up picking San Jose. No real logic to it. San Jose strikes me as just a better, deeper team. And I don't even know if Minnesota can hold on to this playoff spot. But we'll see what happens. I would say San Jose probably in 5.
All right, Andy?
That's what I was going to go with. Minnesota, yeah, they got Parise and Suter, but not a very deep team when you compare them to the San Jose Sharks. So I was going to say the Sharks in 5 as well.
Yeah, the Sharks are just absolutely far too deep, I think, for the Minnesota Wild. So yeah, 5 games makes a lot of sense. Out west, also the last matchup, we've got L.A. against Anaheim. Anaheim with a 3-1 series lead. That should be a very good series. We'll start with Andy on this one here, and we'll save Mish for last on this.
Oof, man, this is a tough one. That's definitely a good matchup. This is a hard one. What's the season series on that one?
3-1 Anaheim with the lead.
Not that really matters, but I was kind of leaning towards Anaheim toward the beginning, so I'll go Anaheim. I think that one could go 6 or 7. I'll say Anaheim in 7. I think that's by far the most competitive matchup that we've named in the West tonight by far. So I'll go with Anaheim, but I think LA will give them a run for their money.
I'm going to go with LA in 7. That's a playoff series that
that's a good
it would be a shame to have in the first round, even though, I mean, that's how the divisions play out now. That's how it would work out. But that's the type of series that it could be the best playoff series of the whole postseason, and it would happen in the first round. I would pick LA in 7, though. I think I still don't trust Boudreau's playoff experience. I'm going to say that every week we do this. I mean, he always gets knocked out earlier than he should. And the Kings, I mean, when it comes to the playoffs, they know exactly what they're doing. I don't think they'll go out in the first round.
Yeah, I can see this going 7 also. I also lean with you with the Kings just because of their experience. I think Boudreau in prior years in the playoffs have had teams that really didn't have as much depth as the Ducks do. And the Ducks are a really solid team top to bottom. Like each line, they're just a really solid competitor. So But, yeah, like, that still doesn't wash that taste out of your mouth of the prior series, you know, like, going back with Washington. So he almost kind of did the miracle and kind of bringing them out of the basement and into the playoffs a couple years back. But didn't really get that chance to kind of shine in the playoffs. So I'll say 7 games also probably. That's going to be a fantastic series.
Yeah.
Moving over to the East, very intriguing stuff kind of happening here now. Each of these matchups are kind of cool now. Toronto and Boston will they get some revenge from losing that 3-1 series kind of lead to the Boston Bruins last year? So, Mish, we'll start over with you, and we'll go over to Andy. Boston's leading 2-1 in the season series. Who you got in that?
Much like I said with Minnesota, I'm not sure if Toronto can keep this playoff spot, especially with what's going on with their goaltending as Reimer kind of falls apart and Bernier is hurt right now. Toronto, I don't think they're going to have the steam to pull it off. Even if they do make the playoffs and keep this spot, I think Boston will pretty much steamroll them. I would pick Boston in 4.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Boston Bruins as well. Don't see a lot of teams matching up too well with them. And Toronto, yeah, I like the speed that team has, and you know they had a nice run last year. I think they'll take Boston to at least 5 games, but I don't see the Maple Leafs getting revenge on the Bruins. The Bruins are just way too deep, and you know just the experience they have in the playoffs and just the style that they play I think they're just going to really bruise the Maple Leafs, and I just don't see Toronto being able to get past them with all the questions that they have. So I'll go with the Bruins in 5.
I think it would have been a much closer series had the goaltending situation kind of not been as murky as it is right now in Toronto. So with that, yeah, I see Boston winning this in 5 with steady kind of goaltending in Toronto right now. I do think they make it a series. I think they're going to make it. They're not going to make it one now with some shaky goalie kind of in there, but yeah, I think they can if they had some solid goaltending. So probably 5 for Boston there. Moving on, we got Tampa Bay right now playing pretty decent hockey. Lost to the Pens, but they had won, I think, 5 straight going up to that season series against the Montreal Canadiens 2-1. That's the kind of series there, Tampa Bay and Montreal. Who you got there, Mish?
This could be a fun series. I am not thrilled with Montreal's defense overall, and because of that, I'm going to pick Tampa Bay's offense over Montreal's defense. That's going to be the difference maker for me here. I think the series could go a while, though. I probably say Tampa Bay in 6, maybe even 7.
Yep, that was it's kind of what I was leaning towards. I like the Tampa Bay Lightning a lot. Now that they have Stamkos back, he's been on fire. I like Ryan Callahan there. I think they got a good thing going. Obviously, Ben Bishop's having a great season. They do have some question marks, but I think they'll be able to get past the Canadiens. But I do think Montreal will push them to 7 games. So I'll say Lightning in 7. I think that'll be a really good series, but I think Tampa Bay comes out on top.
Yeah, I think both teams, can get some really good goaltending out of this matchup. So, Carey Price, a little bit longer of a season than Ben Bishop, but Ben Bishop's been carrying the load there, and he hasn't had very much time off there. So, it's a really hard one to call, but I do think that Tampa Bay is a bit deeper, especially offensively. So I think I'll give him the nod there in 6 games probably. Pittsburgh and Detroit. This is a very fun one. Seemingly, Detroit's making a push right now. So is the Columbus Blue Jackets. But we'll see who kind of wins out there. But Detroit and Pittsburgh rekindling that rivalry from 2008, 2009, 2009. The Stanley Cup kind of runs there. In the Eastern Conference now, Mish, who would you pick in this?
Despite the fact that we just saw the ugly 5-4 overtime loss, the Penguins did score 3 goals on Fleury as well. So, they did have 7 of the 9 goals that were scored in that game. Detroit, it's impressive that they're even on pace to make the playoffs. The way Datsuk and Zetterberg have missed games, and just that team's not what it used to be. And for that reason, Pittsburgh, for as much as we've complained about depth with Pittsburgh, Detroit's hurting far, far more in that regard. So, I'd probably go Pittsburgh in 5, maybe 6 at most.
Yeah, I mean, as Mish said, Detroit obviously has a ton of questions, and with all of the injuries and everything like that, and Jimmy Howard having kind of a down year for his standards, they're very lucky to be where they are, and you can't let that overtime loss that we saw against the Penguins recently, you can't really let that affect your opinion too much, because as we said, I mean, the Penguins were responsible for a lot of those goals, so I just don't think Detroit has a lot of young players, but when it comes to the playoffs and if those guys are thrown into that environment, I don't know how they're going to respond to that. I do think Detroit has a good team. Obviously, the logo is always good. Anytime you see Detroit out there, you know what you're going to get. The Red Wings are going to give everything that they have, and but I don't see them getting past the Penguins in this series. I'll probably say Penguins in 6, just because Detroit. It's just such a Detroit thing to take it longer than it should be. So I'll go Penguins in 6.
I'm going to say Pens in 5 here, but what really amazes me about these two teams is how quickly both of these teams age. I mean, if you look a couple years back, I mean, Detroit was kind of an older team. They were the veteran team whenever they were playing in Stanley Cup Finals against each other. And Pittsburgh was one of the youngest teams in the league, and now Pittsburgh and Detroit, both two of the oldest teams in the league, and it just really kind of sneaks up on you there, just how quickly that all kind of happened. It doesn't seem like it's been all that long ago that these two teams were kind of facing off against each other in the playoffs, in the Stanley Cup. But, man, the Red Wings really just, it all of a sudden just started to hit. And they are very fortunate, I think, to be still in this playoff race. But, like you said, Andy, you know what you're getting with the Detroit Red Wings. It's always quality hockey, and Babcock always has these guys ready. I think the best series possibly in the East in that first round comes down to this last series, much like it did out west with LA and Anaheim. But the last series would be Philadelphia coming back from an awful start in the beginning of this season. The first month was just atrocious. Philadelphia and the New York Rangers, also not with the best of starts in the beginning, but both of these two teams are very, very solid right now, playing very good hockey, and I think that could be a knockdown, drag-out one, couldn't it, Mish?
Two teams just playing extremely well right now. They already have the built-in hatred from just so many divisional matchups. That I don't even know what to do with that. I'm going to say 7 games. I have no clue who to pick in 7 games necessarily. I guess if I'm going to say 7, I almost always pick the goaltender in Game 7. Nice. You have to go Lundqvist on that. So I guess I'd pick the Rangers, but I mean, I'm not sure I can pick against the Flyers with how well they're playing right now. That matchup would be amazing to watch. I guess I will go Rangers in 7, but I'm not going to feel very confident about it.
Yeah, that's almost a coin flip type of series. I definitely agree it'll be 7 games. I'll go with the Flyers. I like the way that they're playing. Obviously both teams are playing really well, and Lundqvist is the better goaltender, but I don't know, just something, I don't know. I just love the way the Flyers are playing right now, and they're playing really, really good hockey at the right time as well, and so are the Rangers, but a lot of guys stepping up for the Flyers. I mean, Wayne Simmons has been doing great things again, and Claude Giroux, obviously, after a really rough start, he's been back on track, so they got Andrew McDonald at the trade deadline, and I don't know if he's making a huge difference or not, but I still love the way the Flyers are playing, and I'll take the Flyers in 7. That's going to be a great series, and whoever does come out of that one is probably going to be really beat up. So whoever plays that team next may have a slight advantage, but we'll have to wait and see. But I'll go with the Flyers in 7 games. But again, can't really be confident with that one because those are 2 really good teams that are playing really good hockey right now.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of stay with the trend here. I think this is going 7 games as well. But the cool thing here is all the former Tampa Bay Lightning players from that 2004 Stanley Cup team. You got Brad Richards, Marty St. Louis, Vinny Leclavier. Sorry, I'm tongue twisted. I need some water. Vinny Leclavier. And now they're all playing against each other in a way. And it's kind of like, that's kind of a little bit of a fun kind of memory, I'm sure, for these guys that are so familiar with each other to kind of look back later on in their careers and be like, we went from being teammates now to all really just hating each other's guts. So, yeah, that should be kind of cool. I do like that, but I'll probably pick. Man, I do love the way the Flyers are playing right now. I do think they're playing good playoff hockey. But I mean, Mish, you brought up a great point that like in Game 7, you basically go with the goalie, and I don't think there's a better goalie on either team than Henrik Lundqvist. So I think he could be the guy that steals that series, and I mean, he's obviously the kind of big shift kind of guy out there where he could just shift that whole playoff series one way or the other. If he kind of gives up bad goals, I mean, then, Flyers are going to pounce all over that. But if he steals games like we know he can, then it's going to be a very, very interesting series and probably a very good series for the New York Rangers. So it's fun. We'll do this again next Monday, and hopefully we get a couple newer matchups and see some other teams kind of come in. It's kind of always fun to see how these are going to shape up kind of going into the playoffs. And 21 days away now, 3 weeks, and we're there. And so We'll see kind of what kind of happens here. But I am liking the way all these are starting to shape up right now, especially out east. For the Penguins, it kind of really kind of comes down to Pittsburgh and Boston. It really does. I mean, you have the two toughest teams maybe playing right now with against each other, and they're just going to beat each other up, and it kind of really just paves a way for a Boston-Pittsburgh kind of rematch, and that could be very cool. So, and then out west, you just don't really know who can come out of that. I mean, obviously St. Louis looks like on paper the best team, but we've seen that with San Jose. We've seen it. We see how good Chicago is year in and year out, and how deep they are, and how much experience the LA Kings have. So, and also, Anaheim, you've got guys on that team that have won cups also. So, each of these teams, it's very interesting to see how it's all going to plot out. But, hey, it's the playoffs. It's almost here, and it's going to be kind of exciting. And you know what? It's because it's the cup, baby.
Yeah, and one team you didn't note in the playoffs matchups, Washington. They are not in the playoff picture right now, so that's in Columbus also. They're very close as well, so those are 2 other teams to watch there in the East.
Don't worry, Toronto will give up their spot for one of them.
Yep.
The way it's looking right now, obviously, but at the same time, Columbus isn't playing great right now, and they need to start playing a lot better, and Pittsburgh's got those guys on Friday, so you could almost guarantee that they're going to give Pittsburgh their best shot just to try to stay alive because, things aren't going so well out there in Columbus right now. They need to kind of pick things up, and you know what? If you can't get motivated to play the Pittsburgh Penguins and play great, then you're not gonna really do well in the playoffs. So, all right, that's gonna do it for us tonight, and we're gonna go ask James Neal a bunch of questions. So, with that being said, let's get out of here.
Let's get out of here.
Let's get out of here.
Let's get out of here. Let's get out of here.
Hey Neal, do you drink whiskey before the game?